Hello, my name is Catherine Lord, and I'm co-founder of Out of the Box. In this workshop, I will give you a brief overview of the approach, followed by an experience of one of our stories, and then an interview with Jenny Fitch, who's been using Out of the Box in schools over the past 2 years. Where has Out of the Box come from? It has been inspired by a well-established approach to teaching Christian religious language called godly play. Godly play has been adapted by Tula Valkonen for secular contexts and is called deep talk. Out of the Box is a form of deep talk. All the stories can be told with one box of simple and tactile materials. Over the past 2 years, the Out of the Box stories have been developed from a collaboration of people across the world meeting on Zoom. Here is one such meeting with people from the UK, Australia, South Africa, and Belgium. Over 60 people have been involved in developing stories, and we now have 370 members in an online peer learning community. Many of the storytellers are using Out of the Box in schools, but also in other contexts such as care homes, workplaces, community groups, therapeutic and faith settings. In schools, Out of the Box is used with children aged 3 to 18 in whole classes, small groups, or one-to-one. Here are sessions taking place in Northern Ireland and in South Korea. The stories can be told on cloth, on sand, and outside on the earth using whatever can be found. An important element of Out of the Box is the free play that takes place to help explore the story in non-verbal ways. Here, the children have been responding to the story by drawing, playing with the materials, and bringing in other items from the classroom, in this case, a nativity set. The first stories to be developed were the wisdom stories that encourage thought and dialogue about values and character. They've been adapted from various sources, including children's literature, traditional tales, or religious stories. We've worked with Laura Allery, the children's author, to use one of her stories as an out-of-the-box story. Our members are developing 5 other genres of stories specifically for schools to enrich curriculum subjects: history, art, nature, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths, and religions. The 7th genre is faith and is being used in faith contexts, not in schools. Out of the Box was piloted in over 20 schools between June 2021 and June 2022 in order to develop the approach and generate qualitative evidence of how Out of the Box supports children's well-being. The main findings were that it creates a calm atmosphere in the classroom. It uses materials that draw children into the story, gives children agency and provides a springboard for play and creativity, develops empathy and strengthens values, enables children to process emotions and express feelings, models good relationships in the class, and encourages in-depth thinking. But the best way to understand Out of the Box is to experience it for yourself. So can I invite you to get ready for a story? Are you ready for a story? Let's turn this upside down. Now we have time to breathe. In a circle of trust, we listen and explore feelings. There's space to wonder, and play. In love. Your story, my story, our story. Let's be curious about this story. There was once a person who had an idea. It felt good, but they weren't sure what to do with it. It didn't seem to fit in. So the person walked away from it. But it followed them. Some people didn't like the idea. So the person tried to hide it. But this made them feel sad. And anyway, the idea wouldn't stay hidden. So the person took it somewhere safe. A place where they could lie on the ground, gaze up at the stars, and dream. The idea needed lots of attention. The more the person cared for it, the bigger it grew. Other people were interested. And they brought their ideas with them. Together they played with all of them. It helped them to see things differently. And to do things differently. Let's be curious. I wonder if there's anything you like about this story. I wonder if there's anything you don't like. I wonder what this story reminds you of. For all that's been said, and for all that hasn't been said, thank you. So that was one of our 49 wisdom stories. In our whole out of the box session, there would be circle building to begin with, to build the group together, the story. The wandering might be verbal wandering out loud, definitely lots of playing with the materials, moving the materials around, wandering in silence in our hearts. And then something called community play. There might be time for that. Community play is where the group plays with a particular question. So it could be whose ideas get to be played with, how do we enable everyone to bring their ideas, or how do we want to see things and do things differently. So those might be the community play questions relevant for that particular story. And then the story's packed away, and then there's, if possible, time for individual response time. So children might want to get the story materials out again and create their own stories. They may build or draw, write a song together, go for a walk, and then at the end come together for a celebration, a small snack, so that there's a threshold of coming out of that out of the box session. So if you've got time, it might be, a whole 2 hours, but obviously if there's just 20 minutes, then you could just do the story and wandering. So that's out of the box. And now I'd like to show you an interview that I had with Jenny Fitch, who's been using Out of the Box for the past 2 years in schools, to hear about how she sees its impact on the well-being of the children she works with. Think of all the people you've had the most experience of using Out of the Box in schools. So
we've just had to catch up very soon.
We've just had to just take a few of your experiences, and you've got some photos that you sent me, so I'm just going to share these now.
So this was a group of 10-year-olds, and I told the story of the idea, and afterwards in the community play part of Out of the Box, the children change the landscape to have a safe space to keep the idea. So the idea couldn't be taken away or broken or changed, but it would have a place where it could go and grow with a person looking after it, which I thought was an interesting idea.
Oh, sorry, I went on too quickly there. Sorry. So is that the person in the box there that we can see?
That's the person lying down in the box, yes. And they put green leaves around it because they wanted it to be a place that was nurturing and growing. And there was just one person, if you notice, one person is just with animals and birds, and another person joined her, but the figure represented what she would want to do with the idea. And she didn't want it to be in a box. She wanted it to be out in the open with all of nature. So she went and did her own thing in another part. Yeah.
Great. So they didn't all have to agree together, but they could have differences, different ideas all in the same picture.
Yeah, they had different ideas, but they all talked together and they all negotiated together. And what was fascinating in one part was they all started talking about the values they held as a class and as a school, and wove the values in, which was interesting as well, that they started to join up lots of aspects of school life. And it was springboarding across the whole of their school day as a story. Yeah.
Great. Shall I show the next one to do with the idea of the story as well?
Yes, this was the next part of their story. They completely changed the landscape, and in their community play, turned the landscape into a classroom. And they just sat their important exams there. In Britain, we call them SATs in year 6, where they have to sit behind one desk on their own. And they all together joined in with imagining what would happen if their ideas took flight during that test and knocked the teacher over. As you can see, she's fallen backwards, and the whiteboard that they created with the blocks and the white square has completely fallen over. And I think that probably was their sort of expression and processing their experience of doing testing that week in a very fun way. The teacher found it very amusing when she saw it.
I love the subversiveness of Out of the Box.
It was great. That was a really good moment.
That's lovely. Great. Okay.
Sometimes it's small groups of children, and I've been working in particular with refugee children, to begin with the Afghan refugees that came in and were being integrated into our schools. And we had some very moving community playtimes, which I haven't got pictures for because to hold it was quite fragile at times. There's a lot of emotion for all of us in the room as some of these Afghan refugees told their stories. One story, I can't remember which one it was that I told, it gave them the freedom to create a house that they would like to live in, but also to build aeroplanes out of other objects in the classroom, Lego and building blocks, to show how they came out of the airports in Afghanistan and how the planes rescued them. And what it did was it gave the other children in that small group from their classes the opportunity to really empathise with them, to understand their story, and for it to be a very safe and brave space where they could share together. And afterwards, the class teacher was saying how much that had integrated all the relationships within that classroom. There wasn't Afghans versus the other children. They were all children together that were supporting and helping each other, which was just lovely. So that was one story. There was another time where one child who's beginning to show signs of real trauma from coming out of Afghanistan, and it was a starfish story again, but he didn't want to work in a team, and he didn't want to save the starfish, and he didn't want other people working there, so he became a soldier and his figure was a soldier, and he built a tower to stand on, and then he ordered other people to kill the starfish and to kill other people on the landscape. And we held that and we worked on it and we recovered it, but it also gave the classroom teacher the insight to be able to go and the evidence for him to go and get additional help, so his well-being could be supported within school. So that was a real threshold moment for him, I think. and for the classroom as a whole.
And how did the class respond to that?
The children listened, and then once he left, because we needed to remove him to another part of the classroom with the teaching assistant, we then talked about his experience leaving Afghanistan, and they wondered what that would be like. So I didn't direct, they just wondered, and then they rebuilt the story. They said, well, actually, it would be much better if we all came back and we carried on saving the starfish. So they sort of restored and healed what had happened in a very helpful way. Yeah.
So when we say, your story, my story, our story, let's be curious about this story, that the children are bringing their own stories into this. I'm hearing this time and time again today and with other people talking. And if children can tell their stories to each other, then the empathy and compassion and
the relational trust, I call it, relational trust in the classroom can be built, which is so important, I think.
Thank you.
There was one other little girl I could tell you about, and she's British, she comes from a very difficult home background, and she'd been all the way through school and never quite fitted in, and was always the person in trouble, always a person staying in at playtime, always a person whose parents had to come in. And I told the story of the donkey, and the donkey that bit and kicked, and there is another way round, as I think the words. And at the end of that, and the end of the community play, she just came to me afterwards and she said, I've got it. And I thought, I said, I wonder what you've got. And she said, I'm the donkey. I'm the donkey, and I could do it differently, and then school would be fine and everybody would be happy. And I just left it at that. And then the following week, the teaching assistant came to me and she goes, what did you do in that session? So I told her, and she said, this particular child has not been in trouble for a whole week. And that's the first time ever. And something shifted in her that's helped her well-being, her education, her socialization, everything. And I was back in that school a few weeks ago, and it has continued. And she's going on into secondary school in a much better place than she would have done. Now, I'm sure other people have put other input in, but that was the moment where her story and that story came together in a helpful way for her. Yeah.
It's interesting. And she maybe needed to discover it for herself as well.
She owned it for herself, and she could see herself as the difficult donkey, she called it.
Oh, what stories of hope and transformation they are.
Absolutely. And it's a real privilege to share them with children, build the communities.
Thank you for listening. To find out more, please go to our website, outoftheboxstories.org. The papers we've written can be found on the blogs. We are a movement of story and play to bring well-being. We're making the paths by walking together, and we would love you to join us. Thank you.